Welcome to a special episode of the Juicecast. Today we'll be joined by Ameen Soleimani. Ameen is a co-founder of Spank Chain, payment platform for the adult industry, co-founder of Iran Unchained, a non-profit providing humanitarian aid in Iran, and a member of Moloch DAO, which has provided funding for open source projects on Ethereum, including Tornado Cash.
In this episode, Ameen tells us about the recent history of Tornado Cash, how it got started, what led to the arrests of Roman Storm and Alexey Pertsev, and why Ameen is taking a stand to fundraise for their legal defense.
With Alexey's trials coming up in March 2024 and Roman's later in the fall, legal expenses range from $90,000 to $100,000 per month. The next 6 months will be crucial in shaping their defense strategy, and their arrests carry serious implications for developer rights to publish open source software.
Ameen and other supporters formed Justice DAO, which engaged an international team of legal counsel to represent Roman and Alexey. Justice DAO has launched a crowdfund on Juicebox, and all funds raised until February 22nd will support the legal aid of Pertsev and Storm.
Alexey and Roman need your help to defend the right to privacy and the right to publish code. Open source is not a crime.
All right, let's jump into this conversation with Ameen.
Welcome, Ameen. Thank you so much for joining us today. How's it going?
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So how did you first get involved with crypto? What is the Ameen origin story?
Yeah, the Ameen origin story is starting out by trying to build Bitcoin arbitrage bots that went through Mt. Gox and then losing all of my money in Mt. Gox like everyone else at the time. A couple of years later, discovered Ethereum. Thought smart contracts were pretty cool. I got myself a job at Consensus in 2016. I thought the payment channels stuff were cool. I started a payment company around that idea in 2017. It's called Spank Chain, did some adult industry payments. Went on to start Moloch DAO, which gave grants to a number of Ethereum open source projects, most notably Tornado Cash. And then also started Rye, which was an Ethereum only stablecoin fork of DAI. So that's sort of what I've been up to in the the ETH space.
Yeah, awesome brief rundown. Let's dive right into Tornado Cash. For anyone who isn't familiar, can you sort of give a rundown of how the protocol works and how it got started from Moloch DAO?
Yeah, so before Tornado Cash, we were basically just all sending money in public with the same accounts, which is pretty silly. Like most people, I think when Venmo, for example, started, were surprised to discover that the default setting for your transactions is public, and blockchains are not much different than that. On Ethereum, we saw what Zcash was doing, which was they had anonymous transactions on Zcash, and we were jealous. And so we wanted to build a tool for Ethereum users to have the same kind of financial privacy while transacting. And so we built basically the minimum viable, version of zero knowledge proofs transactions on Ethereum so that you could deposit your ETH into a smart contract, which was called Tornado Cash. And then you would create a proof when you go to withdraw it that you are the person who deposited that ETH and that it has not yet been withdrawn. And then you would get that back, and somebody who is observing this would only be able to verify that you did in fact prove the things correctly, but they wouldn't be able to tell which deposit was yours. And so this was a breakthrough in sort of private transactions for all Ethereum users who wanted to have a little bit more privacy.
Okay, so from there, can you tell us about the events that led to the arrest of Roman Storm and Alexey Pertsev?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the program worked very well and attracted a lot of money. And some of that money came from what is widely believed to be a North Korean hack of a gaming protocol called Axie Infinity. So in 2022, in the summer, there was a hack for several $100 million on the Axie Infinity smart contracts. And some money from that hack started getting routed into the Tornado Cash smart contracts. And so after that, it was a couple months before the US government sanctioned the contracts and made it illegal for US people to interact with the contracts, to deposit funds or withdraw funds. You have to like submit a form to OFAC and get their permission to withdraw funds. There's a special process. And so they also then imprisoned Alexey Pertsev, one of the developers who was in the Netherlands at the time. And they started their investigation into other Tornado developers. And so they accused the devs. Initially, they didn't accuse Alexey of anything. They just held him without charges, but eventually accused him, I think, for either conspiracy or for facilitating money laundering or facilitating money laundering. I know the American charges on Roman, which came. So then in this summer, a couple months ago, there were charges pressed against Roman Storm. And so that was for, conspiracy of facilitating money laundering. In their, announcement, they said that like all of the several $8 billion that went through Tornado Cash was all criminal activity. And that's pretty disappointing to see. But yeah, there's a summary of this is that there are charges outstanding against Alexey Pertsev in the Netherlands and Roman Storm in America. And the charges against him are surprising because by his own admission, he was cooperating with the case for several months before they pressed charges against him, which is not great in terms of what it means for the perspective of people trying to help the regulators and law enforcement.
Yeah, it was pretty wild to see all of it unraveling. So in response to like the situation with the Tornado Cash devs, a campaign has been launched on Juicebox to fundraise for the legal defense of both Roman and Alexey. Could you talk about the goals of the campaign and sort of how supporters can get involved?
With the help of Juicebox, we're launching a new fundraising campaign to help the legal defense fundraising for Alexey Pertsev, for Roman Storm, for their legal defense funds. We have made a new nonprofit called Justice DAO. It's myself, a couple friends that have raised money from various individuals from Moloch DAO and through the official fundraiser. And we want to now help coordinate the fundraising for Juicebox. And so we're encouraging people to donate to help spread the word, because this is a fight that impacts all of us and it influences the future of, Ethereum and building open source tools for, people permissionlessly, because it's an extension of the regulation by enforcement regime where, we don't have all of the context of even understanding the rules. And then we're trying to build within a framework and the regulators decide that you've stepped out of the line and now it's an opportunity for them to make an example out of somebody. And that has an extremely high personal cost for the developers involved. And they are basically facing it alone, except for the support that we can give them. So I think it's important that we rally to this cause and show that as a community, we support, not only the ideas of, open source, privacy, but also the developers who build the tools.
Yeah, we listened to your ETHDAM talk on why privacy matters. And I remember you started with like a really simple statement that was privacy is normal. And I feel like kind of broadly speaking, there's a bit of a misconception in terms of misconstruing privacy tech as somehow being something that like criminals or shady actors would be interesting, even though this isn't really the case. And it's actually just a useful tool for anyone to maintain privacy. It could be for any number of reasons. And I think you described the origin story of Tornado Cash as like Ethereum nerds wanted a mixer for personal privacy. So I'm wondering if you could talk a bit more about sort of like these tensions between like public blockchains and then personal privacy, and sort of why you believe that privacy should be considered like a default rather than an exception.
Yeah, I think somewhere in that talk, I also say if you criminalize privacy, then only criminals get privacy, right? And I think that that's the opposite of what we want, because there's something where privacy is safety, where we are not obligated to publicly share financial information, right? That's just full stop. And so building systems that allow us to interface with them without publicly revealing financial information seems like a good idea. And so having the system, the technology that allows for that is important. And the rules, it's not necessarily our job as developers to make the rules, but we can design the systems to work with them. And so there was even a legal path that was proposed and published at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis for the Tornado Cash system to be compliant and able to be used. And that was like, yes, you'll need to go to a financial institution and reveal, which deposit you are, but it still is useful for proving that you are not a terrorist or something publicly. And so that's useful for regulators. And beyond that, I think like people get a misconception about privacy. Like privacy being normal is like something that we take for granted in many of our systems. One of the important ones is voting, for example. I think it would be silly, absurd, and dangerous even if our votes were public for elected officials, right? Not only from like a systemic risk of governance failure, okay, I bribed, a million people to vote this way, but also because I could go hunt people down based on, their votes, or I could, create some penalties for employees or something if they didn't vote the way I wanted, right? And so these are all systems that we understand very, intuitively the need for privacy. And so who builds it, right? Unless we want to be subject to this sort of backward MySQL database technology forever, we're going to need to build ZK-enabled, systems. And so like a payment system is like the version 1 of like trying to advance humanity in this direction, right? And it's all the same people building the same type of stuff, right? This all comes out of like, Ethereum Foundation, Semaphore, blockchain privacy and research scaling explorations, right? Like we, as Moloch DAO, just published a new report like this week about the state of privacy. And it was a bunch of nerds getting together being like, okay, how do we do all the different private voting systems? This guy does homomorphic encryption. That guy does, zero knowledge voting, and they all have limitations. And we want to get to the bottom of this because, for example, when we see Andrew Yang, this is a couple of years ago, he was like, we're going to put voting on the blockchain. Everybody who knew what they were talking about freaked out and was like, no, absolutely not. We cannot do that because we don't have the technology. Like all the votes would be public. We'd just bribe each other. Like we know how this works, right? And so it's critical like for humanity, for any democratic future that we want to have all of these systems. And like the base payment stuff is like table stakes, right? So for us to get stuck there is like really disappointing because there's so much more to build. Building base level financial privacy seems like an important first step, and it would be great to build this for the governments, countries that appreciate it. And I hope that the United States, which, on paper takes individual sovereignty and freedom and personal protections very seriously, would rise up and basically fall on the right side of history with respect to Tornado Cash and private systems that are open source to help people, stay safe.
Yeah. Like, in your opinion, what are the implications of these arrests and sanctions for the broader crypto ecosystem? Like, what does this mean for both developers and users going forward?
It would be, in a different reality. There's a conversation and, there's regulators. You can talk to people. They help you, identify potential risks and pitfalls, keep you safe. But that's not the world we live in. And so I think it'll have a chilling effect on these things. And I think it could even result in policies that we suffer from, that the people put in place who don't care particularly about it, want to, protect the, systems that be, and ultimately leave the those of us on the frontiers to, suffer or be delayed for several years and push us offshore or push the innovation offshore. And then it'll guarantee that other countries are ahead of the United States in terms of digital infrastructure. That's not what I want as an American. I would prefer we be able to innovate here. But when developers are, thrown in jail with little warning, that's not a risk many people are willing to take.
I'm just curious, have you ever met Alexey or Roman? Like, do you know either of them well? Just curious.
Yeah, I know Alexey, I know Roman. These are all people I've talked to, I've worked with, gave grants to on behalf of Moloch DAO. Moloch helped pay for many of the first grants, audits, trusted setup audit, things like that. And so we were working closely on all these things. It's a terrible tragedy and a shame. They're just great developers, have a lot to contribute to the world.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I find really striking about the Tornado Cash situation is that, I mean, both Roman and Alexey are normal people with families and people that love them, and it's really shocking to see people have the book thrown at them in this way with so little recourse and so little that can be done kind of in the short term. I don't know. It's just a very like scary future, because I don't think any of the developers involved had any intentions beyond creating software that would help people in their everyday lives. So it's pretty kind of deplorable to see them treated this way. And like you said, I think has a lot of implications for how developers are able to create new things in the United States and elsewhere going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's less eloquently a bunch of bullshit. There's Alexey is married. His wife was very upset at the charges. Roman, I think, also had trouble. It's like these guys were family men, Like this is the level of discourse that we have, right? They just straight up accuse us of being North Korean agents on a Tuesday or whatever, day they've announced this stuff. And it's deplorable is a good word for it. We'll go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of the teams that are involved with this type of tech are actually, I would say, very willing or even eager to work with regulators. But it seems like the approach to enforcement is so heavy-handed that they don't even get the chance to necessarily work closely with regulators, or not in a productive or like collaborative way, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And so in this case, right, if people are using this protocol in illegal ways with stolen funds, then those people should be held accountable. The developers clearly, in this case, very clearly have no control over the system, because their imprisonment and removal has had no impact. That there's nothing that they could have done. There's no buttons they push. There's no services that they need to keep running in order for the protocol to stay. And that's something that, as a society, we're going to have to come to terms with, is that there are these programs that sort of are distributed in nature, and you cannot just like, take the dev to jail and expect that it stops. Yeah, we have to stop taking the devs to jail if possible. And yeah.
As we wrap up, is there anything else regarding Roman and Alexey or the campaign more broadly that we didn't cover that you'd like to mention, or any closing thoughts on the whole situation?
I just want to thank you guys for your time and giving us the platform and letting us use Juicebox to raise awareness about this cause. I appreciate it, and look forward to launching with you guys and seeing if we can support the legal fundraiser for these fine gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Ameen. It means a lot to be able to talk to you and about this situation. It's a really serious cause, and as soon as the events happened, I knew that there needed to be a campaign about this. So I'm really glad that we were able to come together and for Justice DAO to make this happen, and also to get a chance to talk to you. We really admire all of your contributions to Ethereum and crypto more broadly over the years, from Spank Chain to the situation with Tornado Cash and privacy pools and Moloch DAO. So yeah, just want to say thanks again for your time. It means a lot.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on the show and for agreeing to host this on behalf of the fundraiser and Justice DAO. So thank you.
Okay, so we'll put the links to the campaign in the show notes, and yeah, we'll be talking a lot about it over the next few weeks and probably the next month or more. So yeah, stay tuned for more about the campaign for Roman and Alexey. All right, thanks again, Ameen.
Thank you guys.